Good morning. Today we are going to be talking about sustainable alternatives and practices. So when we're talking about sustainable alternatives, we're also going to be talking about green infrastructure and looking at different things that we can implement in home or in some of the other structures that we have in our communities to make it a little bit more sustainable. So first we want to talk about what sustainability is. So sustainability, one of the definitions I really like is to create and maintain conditions that meet our current needs while allowing future generations to meet their own needs. So when we talk about this, it can cover anything from economic sustainability to social sustainability to environmental sustainability. And what we're going to be focusing on today is environmental sustainability. So first I want to take a look at an example of something that everybody sees every day. So this is a very nice house. They've got a well-manicured lawn, they've got a beautiful, nice roof, and a few things that I want to point out that we may not notice just looking at it straightforward is some of these things are going to cause problems such as stormwater runoff, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is in the next couple slides. So I really want to draw attention to this impermeable roof. I also want to draw attention to the lawn, which is absolutely beautiful. However, what you're going to notice is that you don't see any kind of weeds. It's very green. You're not seeing any kind of flowers or anything in it. So we can go ahead and assume that there are chemicals being used, which is fine. Normally, when there is chemical usage, we're using things such as pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and that's going to give everybody that really lush green color that we associate with really just well-manicured lawns. And so some of the things that this is going to affect is going to be our wild and native pollinators, because this right here, where we don't have anything growing here, that is not going to be able to sustain a lot of our pollinator populations. So I talked briefly about stormwater runoff, and I want to talk a little bit more about what that actually is. So a definition that I found that I really like is that water is generated from snow melt or major storm events, heavy rainfall that flow over these impermeable surfaces and end up not soaking into the ground. And a lot of times this is going to contribute to different types of pollution, one of those being non-point source pollution. And so what happens is there is so much water that is coming off of these impermeable surfaces, it's not being able to soak into the ground, and so it is flowing directly into a lot of storm drains. It's causing a lot of erosion and all sorts of little problems like that. So there are several different types of pollution that we deal with. The main thing that I feel like a lot of people probably know of, when you think of pollution, you think of trash blowing in the wind. Well, that's not always the case. We also have a lot of pollution in our waterways. We can deal with pollution in the air. There's also light pollution, where you see cities at night, and so you don't see a lot of the stars out there. That's due to light pollution. But what we're going to focus on today, because we're talking about stormwater runoff, is we're going to talk about a lot of non-point source pollution, this one right here. So the biggest difference between non-point source and point source is that point source pollution comes from just one single identifiable source. So a big example of that would be if you see smokestacks with factories, you see all the gases coming up. You can also see drainage pipes into our waterways. You can tell exactly where those pollutants are coming from. With non-point source pollution, it's a little bit harder to figure out where exactly the pollutants are coming from. So a lot of times, one of the biggest examples that we see are from agricultural fields. So after heavy rainfall events, a lot of that water is going to be rushing through that field. It's going to be carrying eroded soil, it's going to be carrying fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, you name it, all the way into our waterways. So I also want to talk about some of the green infrastructure that we can put in place to kind of mitigate and kind of lessen all of the stormwater runoff. So a couple of examples that we're going to see today, there are green roofs or vegetated roofs, and all that is taking the rooftop of a building, making sure it's enforced to hold the new weight, making sure that we're altering the soil the way that we need to, and planting plants that are going to be able to absorb all of that rainfall. We're actually going to see a guest speaker presentation on it today, and we are also going to see a live green roof in action. Another example of green infrastructure that's really fun is permeable pavement. So a lot of times you see that blacktop and not a lot of water can seep through, but with this permeable pavement, water is going to be able to soak through. Another example of some sustainable practices that we can put in place even at home, there are these things called rain barrels. And so what you do is you attach the downspout from your gutter to that rain barrel, and it's going to collect all of that water that's going to run off of your roof, and it's going to hold it in this basin, and then you can use that water to water your gardens, to wash your car, or all sorts of stuff. I would not recommend drinking that water though. That is strictly for watering plants. Another thing that you can do are rain gardens. So these are they're temporary wetlands. They hold water for about a couple days, so you're not going to have to worry about mosquitoes or anything kind of taking up root there. But it's going to catch a lot of water that is essentially coming off of different parking lots and driveways and all sorts of stuff like that. So now I want to take a look at this example again, now that we've talked about some of these practices that we can put in place. So again, we've got that rooftop, so now we know that we could take alternative methods, such as implementing green or vegetated roofs. I will say that is a more intensive option to do. It's a little more pricey, but it is an option. We can also talk about alternative lawn care methods. And so basically what that is kind of the lowest maintenance kind of deal that you can do. Is kind of one of the easiest sustainable practices to implement. Because honestly, you can just let your lawn go. You can not do anything to it, kind of see what grows up from the seed bank. So a lot of times you're going to start getting what you would generally consider weeds, but are actually different native flowers that are going to support our pollinator populations. And you're going to get through those through using less pesticides, less herbicides, and so that it's going to be less chemicals that are going to wash off from your lawn and into the road. We can also put rain barrels down in our little downspouts here. It's a little hard to tell with that, but that rain barrel is going to be able to catch a lot of the water runoff from your roof, and is also going to dissipate and lessen the amount of stormwater runoff from your house. So I also want to leave you with some key terms that we're going to go over today. I want to talk about the point source pollution, non-point source pollution. You're going to hear some guest speakers talking about watersheds. You're going to see an activity about light pollution. We're going to be talking about way stations, and you're going to see a real life example of a green roof. And again, if you have any questions over any of the material we went over today, you can reach out to me at caitlin.goatee@kysu.edu. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.